Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do, because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes. Get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. Did you actually watch and listen to all of those memojis that your children sent me from your phone today?
I did not. I listened to about 3 of them and I was just like, oh, that's annoying.
Well, did you hear the one that was like, your husband is dead?
What's so funny is I heard him in the background saying that, but I was like, why is he saying that? I just thought it was Father's Day related or something. But no, my son got a hold of my phone and sent Mel about 612 memojis, which are those like little faces that will mimic your mouth. And so it looks like they're talking. And he was just basically screaming weird things at her. Having a great time.
Let me play one. Here's my favorite one.
Happy Father's Day. I'm sending this because your husband is dead. And by the way, that's crap made by Owen's art. And it's not crap!
You're welcome, Mel.
Thank you.
That's what you get by being fake married to me.
I thought it was hilarious and amazing. Don't tell them that, because then it will give them fuel.
I know. They'll just do it again.
Father's Day to you.
And a Father's Day to you as well.
How's it been going?
I feel like there was some ups and some downs. In the morning, I was annoyed at everybody because I always just want them to realize it's a different day and be nice, and then they are just kids and they don't. And then I pulled out, we have memory books with pictures of Dad with each of the kids. We pulled those out and looked through them. And then we drew pictures and like wrote letters to him. And my 8-year-old, he's looking at it and he goes, I'm starting to cry. And I was like, oh, you are? And he said, yeah, why am I starting to cry? And I was like, well, you're feeling probably sad. Do you want to talk about it? No. And he just laid his head on the table for a little while. And then he put his head back up and he said, I can't look at this anymore.
Oh.
Yeah. And then we wrote letters, and then the same one was like drawing pictures of him in his grave and stuff, and it got really dark and weird. And they tell you in therapy to not like try and interfere with that or be like alarmed by that, because that's how they process. But you're over there sitting thinking like, this is a little disturbing.
Dang.
Yeah. And then he said he was looking at one particular page and he goes, "We never got to go to Star Wars Land together." Like that's what was crushing his tiny heart. So that was kind of a bummer.
That's sad.
It's his birthday tomorrow, though. So for the rest of the day, after we did that, we're done with Father's Day and we moved on to birthday. So a little of each, a little of bypassing, a little of actually trying to, lean in and dig into it a little bit.
One more Father's Day checked off the books.
Yep. How about you, Mel? Was it any different than a normal day? Did you just hide in your cave?
I did not hide in my cave, but on Sundays I have been playing for a church with a rock band. So we did that today, or I did that. And then I came home and we had dinner for my dad.
And what did he have for dinner? What was his choice?
He chose hamburgers.
We had hamburgers for dinner too.
It's classic dad food, right?
Yeah. Well, my son is the one who chose it because it was his birthday meal, right? So we had hamburgers, corn on the cob, Cheetos, olives, and shrimp.
Wow. That's versatile.
Yes. We like to keep, get all the major food groups in there.
My brother-in-law came over and he was part of our family.
Aww.
It was my parents and me and him, and my sister was not able to come, so we missed her. But yeah, and it's so weird because I never had a Father's Day with Scott. That was because he was a father or things like that, and it's just such a strange thing to think about. Because I'm not mourning that I am helping children grieve.
Yeah.
My reality is that he was not one. He wanted to be a dad. Obviously, didn't happen because he died.
That you know of. Maybe he has secret children from before you were married.
Oh.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, please have them not find me. I'm not capable of helping right now.
Yeah, once again, you're mourning what could have been instead of what did happen, you know.
So I'm sure there are some part of my brain that's clouding things over because that's very on par with our trauma and specifically mine as well, as we know. So I kind of just feel kind of flatline, like not like ecstatically happy, not sad, just stable. And I'm good with that.
So you had a stable line, whereas I had ups and downs. I had the down part and then the happy part because of the birthday thing. So,
I feel like I've been better at highly controlling my circumstances. However, I feel like sometimes that's not good because then when I do get in situations that I cannot control, I'm a wreck. So we'll see as I start integrating into more life with non-widow friends, maybe if that ever happens, if I break down more, but I don't know. But yeah, how did all of y'all survive Father's Day? Was it good? Was it bad? Was it neutral? Was it all of the things?
Did you stay off of social media so you didn't have to see all of the "my husband and my father are the best"?
And I'm so lucky I don't know what I did to deserve him. As if it's a part of you that is worthy, based on worthiness.
Yeah, and what would I do without him?
I'll tell you.
You would cry, and you would start a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Mel.
What?
My bike broke.
I know. This is the worst news.
But guess what?
Better news?
Yes, somebody gave me what I needed to fix it.
Who gave it to you? That's so cool.
I know.
You didn't even have to order it?
Mm-mm. Somebody was like, I have some extras in my garage. Come get them. So I did. But it doesn't matter because you're going to be gone this whole week anyway.
Yes. Since Scott died, his family has started doing an annual get-together.
Beautiful.
The thing that's funny about it is that there was nothing established like this when Scott was alive. So this is all post-mortem.
It's funny how death sometimes brings you together because you realize what can be lost in an instant. So that's maybe one of the positives that comes from death, if you can say that. I need you to be home, though, because you need to take me to buy a new car.
I really would love to. Can you hold off 1 week?
I don't know. My car just turned off on the freeway today. Just bloop. Not working anymore. No power steering. No electronics. It was awful.
So I'm pretty sure nobody on the internet's going to give you a free car. So we will have to go car shopping.
I know. I'm petrified. I don't deal well with this kind of thing. Decision making.
I love it. I'm here for you.
Okay, you have to do all of the hard stuff. Like when you go in and they're like, here's the best offer we can give you. And you're like, ha, 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 you're dreaming. Like you have to do all of that, okay?
Okay.
And can you get it for me for $1.99?
From the dump.
No, I already have a car that doesn't work.
Okay.
Okay. We'll work on that when you get back.
So I had a gig this week, and part of it, there was an orchestra, and there was a French horn player that I saw at it, and I had done a gig with him before, but he didn't remember me. I didn't think it was we're not in the close musical circles. But he comes down and he's talking to my friends, and they're like, oh yeah, and this is Mel. And I was like, hi, we've played a gig together before, but you might not remember me because I didn't look like this with blue hair at the time. And he goes, oh yeah, I mean the COVID hairstyle, right? And I was like, oh boy, here we go. My body, when you are about to just drop the widow bomb on somebody.
It's like the fight or flight comes in. You're get sweaty and you're like, what do I say? What do I, you know? Yeah.
Yes. And then your mouth just starts talking. Well, that happened. And so I was like, oh no, here it goes. I said, no, this is my widow hairdo. And he did a double take. He's like, did you say widow? I was like, oh boy, I've now done it. I've now shocked and traumatized somebody because of my mouth that I could not stop. And I was like, yeah, my husband died, so this is what I did. And I thought that I had ruined his life. And then he goes, my wife died 1.5 years ago.
No.
He goes, but don't worry, I got remarried in May.
Oh. Okay.
I was like, okay, joke's on me. Also,
but still, what are the chances of that?
I know. I felt better for a second when he was like, yeah, I get it. But then.
I don't know. He still gets it.
He still gets it, but.
Yeah.
But he's in the married life now, and I don't even know. We didn't talk past that because I was traumatized by myself. I can't control my mouth.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I can't believe you didn't share that story already, Mel. But thank you, because I enjoyed the shock factor. It gave me a little excitement in my life.
Well, then after that, I got locked in the bathroom, and I almost missed the start of the gig. So I was a disaster, so I'm sure I just forgot. I know.
I am just not surprised by this at all. That's amazing. Mel.
What?
Should people join the Widow Wives Club?
I mean, if you want to hang out with us and have people that are your friends that are strangers from the internet, but that will become your new BFFs, yes.
So search for it on Facebook, the Widow Wives Club. Make sure you answer all of the questions, including agreeing to the group rules. And if you have any problems, email us.
And we have Instagram, Facebook, and a website, and all of our links are on all of those things. Even podcast links. Did you know this, Anita? You set it up, but I don't know if you know this. Sometimes people have problems with the podcast app every once in a while. It probably most likely depends on an issue with the phone or something. However, if you cannot find the episodes at any particular day, you can go to our website, widowwedonow.com, and our episodes are on that website. So you can bypass an app if you need to.
That was a great tip. I feel like that was worth their admission.
Have you noticed that Apple Podcasts has subscriptions now?
Yeah, and I've noticed that people are having problems now too. So with the podcast.
What kind of problems? With ours?
Yeah, there's just more hiccups, it seems like, because they're moving through, new system. People have problems.
As of today, we have not moved to a subscription model. We have a Patreon, and so that's kind of our jam right now. So
join us on the Patreon if you want to keep the podcast going. Show us some support and love. It's patreon.com/WWDN. It's good fun.
There are 4 tiers.
That's all. The end.
You get things on all the different tiers. That's all we'll say. It's a mystery. Go to the site and check it out. It helps us keep the podcast going. So if you find that this podcast is valuable and it's helped you, please help us so that we can continue to help others, and consider joining our Patreon. And if not, it's all good.
Yeah, we know you're widows. We're widows too.
Speaking of the Patreon, if you do join, you get a shout out. And that is what we are doing right now.
We're going to start with our secret dead husband. And to the secret dead husband, we'd like to say, don't worry, be widow.
What?
You didn't say it had to make sense.
Okay.
Don't widow, be happy or sad.
Or deranged. Or neutral.
Or neutral.
Or numb. Next we have Constance Dahlbach,
David Kelly,
Don Satterwhite,
Ivan the Misner,
Kat,
Amy
Sapp,
Ashley Hahn.
Christina Shiflett.
Now I don't even know how to say Ashley's name. We've said it so weird so many times that I've lost. I don't even know what it really is.
I think it's both now.
Mindy Holmgren.
Danielle Katterberg.
Not a Debbie Downer.
Dennis Brazo.
Jenny Taylor.
Jenny Wang.
Kirsten Stromberg.
Laura Bradbury.
Leslie Webb.
Missy Schubert.
Rachel Barbosa.
Whoop. Sarah Morris.
Sylvia Shore.
Karen from Canada. Some of those were widow wives, and we forgot to say it, so sorry.
It's fine.
Now we're on to widow besties.
Anna Tracy.
Christina Scambato.
Christine Anderson.
Diana Becker.
Emily Thornton.
Emily Toledo.
Aaron Posick.
Gabe Lozano.
Ian Sini.
Ileana Bell Ruiz. Happy birthday, Tony.
Oh, she had a double whammy. Jack Skellington.
Jamie Aliota.
My mom.
Jenny Marrow.
Jocelyn Milo.
Joy Kirsch.
Katie Radcliffe.
Kara Scara.
Lori Farrington.
Marie Hoffman.
Marjorie Lewis.
Mary McGowan.
Peter Rugavina.
Sarah Kennedy.
Shannon Helm.
Sunshine Haven.
She has the prettiest flowers.
Yeah, good job, Sunshine.
Tammy Schwartz.
Tara Wallace.
They call her Valerie.
Oh my gosh.
Do you remember that song? You don't
No, but I do know, like, the Amy Winehouse Valerie.
Oh, I don't know that one. That was from the Monkees.
And finally, Shiplap Wendy. It's so in right now, okay?
I know. It's so in. Thank you to everybody who's supporting us on the Patreon. We really appreciate each and every one of you. And so do the other people who get to listen to the podcast because you're supporting us.
Thank you.
If you want to buy us a taco, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonow. We do actually go get tacos sometimes.
Also, everybody, if you need therapy, we have a unique link that gives you 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. Take advantage of that. Get some therapy. We all need it. I use it. It's great.
It takes away a lot of the barriers of getting therapy. You know, when people recommend a therapist, this has happened to me over and over and over. They say, oh, you need to go see this person, but then they're full and it makes you want to go and like jump in a river. Doesn't happen with BetterHelp.
Or you have to wait 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
it also takes away a lot of barriers like pants.
I was going to say location, but you went straight to pants.
TryBetterHelp.com/WWDN.
And that's HELP.
Like the Beatles movie, Help.
I Need Somebody.
Oh, I love that. Let's watch that.
It's such a weird show. Perfect. Mel, are you ready to get into our interview today?
Yes.
We wanted to talk to this person on the heels of Father's Day. She is well known in some circles, and she is very good at breaking through social norms and doing not what you're just supposed to do, but actually looking at things as whether or not they're beneficial to you and helping you make decisions based on that and not things like what you should be doing.
We also get into some fun times talking about social media and how we can navigate that with our grief. So stay tuned.
Stick around. I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
We're two young widows who survived another Father's Day, and we're just trying to help you figure out Widow. We Do Now. This episode is brought to you by the Misner Family Foundation in memory of Elisabeth Misner. Mel, I think it's your turn to introduce who our guest is today. And we're so excited and we're a little nervous.
The Queen Empress of the world. Also,
yes.
fellow musician.
Yeah.
This is Dr. Julie Hanks.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Where do you want to tell us what kind of a doctor you are? What's your specialty? Who are you?
Who am I? Yeah, I'm a therapist. I have a PhD in marriage and family therapy, a master's in clinical social work.
Where are you recording from, Julie?
I am right now in Sandy, Utah.
Dr. Hanks has her own podcast, and will you tell us a little bit about that, what you do and who you talk to?
Yes, Ask Dr. Julie Hanks is the name of the podcast, and I coach just a regular person about a question that they have that they want to ask me. So they're pretty short, like 20 to 30 minute episodes. And it's just regular people sharing their struggles. And then I try to help them. And my goal is that everybody, even if you don't identify with the exact issue that the person's talking about, that you get a tool or an insight from every episode.
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts, and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor. So I just listened to one of your episodes and you actually had another young widow on there. So that was interesting. I was like, one of us.
Yep.
So we have a question or a couple of questions that we wanted to ask you. On your podcast, you talk a lot about self-care. True or false?
True.
And self-care becomes a little bit of a sticky wicket when you've lost your partner. Not only does it become harder to be able to have the time to do that, and then there's also some questions about what's an appropriate amount of self-care, and if we're just trying to avoid doing things that need to be done and calling it self-care. So we wanted to ask you your thoughts on how we know if self-care is actually beneficial or whether we're using it to avoid things we don't want to do.
Okay, let's define self-care.
Okay.
Self-care is doing what's in your best interest with regard for others. So you're aware of the needs of those around you. Selfishness is doing what's in your best interest without regard for others.
Okay.
So the difference is regard for others. So if someone else is relying on you and you are like, well, it's, I'm just doing I'm doing self-care, and you drop the ball for that person, like that's not self-care, right? That's selfish if you're not taking into consideration the impact and you're not keeping your commitments to other people. So it's not about just taking care of your own needs, but it's about taking care of your own needs and being aware of the impact on other people. So then your question about how do you know if you are doing self-care or avoiding doing things that need to be done? I don't know that you need to know the answer to that. I think sometimes self-care to avoid doing something else that you don't want to do is just fine.
Like if I want to play Candy Crush for 7 hours, can I call that self-care?
Is it what's in your best interest? Is it taking care of your needs? And it might be it, but on another day, it might not be. Right. So that's just kind of knowing yourself and what really fills you. Avoidance is not self-care. It can be, but it's not the same, right? It just avoiding something unpleasant can be self-care, but not necessarily.
It's like that whole a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square.
Exactly.
In geometry or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did so well in math. Yeah. So
well, you are a doctor. Come on.
I'm a doctor of relationships.
not of triangles.
Not numbers. Not numbers of triangles. At all. Not at all. So self-care sometimes can be that, like, I'm not going to do that thing I don't want to do right now. I'm going to do something I want to do.
A lot of life coaches are using the words buffering. And I listened to some of those things, and it seems like there's a negative connotation a lot of the times when people are presenting this avoidance tactic as buffering, like it's something that's bad. But I know going through my own life, sometimes I'm like, I just need a break. Like when you think about buffering with like the computer, for example, like the internet, it's like the signal has no more left to give you unless you give it a break for a second. And so I was wondering if you could speak to the different types of what people would consider buffering versus the self-care portion of it. How can we see it as negative versus positive? Is it all just neutral? Like, what do you think as a therapist?
Yeah, I haven't heard the term buffering used before, which I'm surprised. And you're saying it's used in a negative way?
It's used in life coaching, like specifically Brooke Castillo life coaching.
Okay.
That kind of model thing.
As a negative thing?
Yeah, as an avoidance thing and something for people to take a look at. And
yeah. So I think I agree with that. It's something to take a look at. But avoidance isn't always bad. Sometimes you just need a break. Sometimes you need to play Candy Crush for 8 hours. And
yes.
But if it's every day, all day, it's probably not in your best interest, and it's probably not with regard for others. So those are kind of what you want to be looking at.
Can we talk about that with regard to others portion?
Mm-hmm.
This is a part that I think that we really sometimes struggle with, because in the early part of grief, you really don't have the capacity to do anything but take care of yourself and your family and your immediate, eat, drink, shelter, clothing, not even showering doesn't get on the list, things like that. And it's like there's a time where we can't even have regard for anybody else. And then we grow into a place where we can start to have more. But how do we reconcile that when we are in a place where we really can't at some points in time?
Yeah, so I'm not saying with regard for everyone, but when you're taking care of your family, you are regarding others that are in your stewardship, right? You're not just like, okay, run wild, children, like no curfew, do whatever you want, go do drugs, go, you're taking care of like the needs that are priorities to you. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. How do we prioritize when we give of ourselves and when we stay more capsular and to ourselves and our own immediate needs?
When you have it to give. So a client of mine had a hard time saying no to requests. She's dealing with some trauma, some depression. And she came up with the phrase, I just don't have that to give right now. And I thought that was so honest and kind. And it's okay if you don't have that to give right now beyond your immediate survival circle. And when you have that to give, then consider giving it.
Can you say no too much?
You can, I think you can go to an extreme, but when you are in grief, in survival mode, you should be saying no to pretty much everything else. Like, so it depends. Like, if you are saying no to avoid growth opportunities, then that's probably too much. But when you're overcome with grief, you're already in a growth opportunity that is overwhelming, and there's not room for other things. So once you're not past the grief, but through enough of the process that you have a little bit more to give, then give that. Be willing to, be open to other growth opportunities.
So I have kids. Mel doesn't have kids. Do you have any advice for how to deal with the feelings of, I don't want to say guilt, because I think that's a strong word to use, but the PTA has to be run and somebody has to do it. And you start to think to yourself, well, if I don't do it, somebody else has to pick up the ball that I'm dropping. There is a certain amount of volunteering and helping that makes the world go round in our society. How do we get past the feeling of not good enough and imposing on others what we're not able to do?
So it's not an imposition because they have choice. You're not making someone run for PTA president. You're not making someone go on the field trip. If no parents can go, they don't go on a field trip, and they're, okay. There are seasons, there are times. I did not do a lot of volunteering in the PTA. I decided my community service is on social media. So I went on some field trips and did some school parties. And that was kind of like my boundaries for myself, because I give in other ways. When you are grieving and helping your kids grieve, that is contributing to your community, because they need to get through that. You need to get through this process. That is a gift to the community, because you will have healthier, happier people in the long run that then will be able to give to the community. So that's your community service when you're grieving, is to go through the process and help your loved ones go through the process.
Do you have is it the same about work situations? So, when we're a mess, it's like, I can't go to that meeting. Well, somebody else has to go to that meeting.
Let them go to that meeting. And then when you have it to give, you be that one to go to the meeting when you're in a different place.
How do we know when we've got it to give again?
You test it out. You go, okay, I'll go. And then you're like, no, this is too much. I can't do that again.
I hate meetings, actually. I'm never going to a meeting again. What about that, where we start to just think that we have a pass not to do things because we've had that, not that excuse, but we haven't had it to give, but maybe we do now, but we just don't want to?
I think that's fine. I think people who have lost close family members get a pass as long as they need to.
Oh, okay. Dr. Julie Hanks, can we get a prescription for that? We need that on a card.
I just, it is so overwhelming. I have to tell you both this, but so consuming, so overwhelming that it's it takes the time it takes. You never get over that loss of a close family member or partner or parent. It's just something that you process, right? And you kind of move through it, but you get as long as it takes.
So you're obviously not a fan of the movement of, I read an article not too long ago that was too much self-care is ruining our society because nobody is helping other people. If we only help ourselves, then nobody is available to help the people who are in need.
So that's a very binary way of thinking about it, that it's society or you. That's with regard for other people, right? Is society. So you're always balancing your needs with the greater needs around you, which is your family, which is your community, school, religious group, whatever you're a part of. Yes, so I don't buy that frame that it's either or. I do think we have shifted a little bit more toward self than community. And maybe we need to shift a little bit more toward community again. But there are some cultures where it's like all about community. It's all about what your family wants. It's not, it's not what you want. And so I don't think that's like any extreme is not healthy. There's always a tension between self and others. And so navigating that tension is kind of one of our jobs, is figure that out. Like, and self-reflect. Am I contributing enough? Do I have something to give to the community? Because in my experience, most people want to be generous. It's not like everybody's like, no, it's just about me. And most people want to be generous, or at least want to be seen as generous, which requires you doing something, right?
I think that's so true. Like, I don't actually want to be generous, but I want people to think I'm generous.
But then you have to do something that at least looks generous.
Yeah, you have to trick people somehow.
Volunteer for some committee, right?
The easiest committee I can get on, the least amount of work, but with the most amount of face.
I'll volunteer for eating the donuts. That's it. So I have a question. Since you brought up social media and that's a way that you contribute, this is kind of sort of in the same vein, just in the social media. But we've noticed in social media, the widow presence is getting more and more prevalent. More and more people are feeling like they're validated or wanting to start accounts. And these are not therapists that are educated like you. They're just people like Anita and me that have different day jobs, basically. And we notice huge divides in how people decide to treat grief. Like we've done episodes and interviewed people where we even talk about how words affect certain people. Some people don't like to be called a widow because they're like, it doesn't define me. And then some people are like, I like being called a widow because I'm going to decide what it means for me. And so we're also all grieving. And so we're like not all mentally stable, of course. But so we're in this community of social media, topics like grief. We're also women. Some people are moms. There's mom versus non-moms. We're also females. And it's a big muck of inspirational things, also irresponsible things, also responsible things, also it's anything I'm sure you can imagine. It's just like anything else. That's kind of the world we're in right now. And how do you navigate that? How can we navigate that with our grief brains? We're females, like we want to show that we're unified, but then there's also a lot of divisiveness.
Yeah, so there's really not a lot you can do about what other people are doing or saying, but you can be a voice for unification. You can be a voice for not judging other people. You can be a voice for allowing other points of view to be valid. And what you're describing is just life. I mean, take widow out of it, just any group of people, right? There's polarization, politics or religion or mom and not, mothers and not moms, or women who've had miscarriages. And like the great thing about social media is that everybody's voice can be heard. And it's okay that not everybody agrees. You don't have to be united as a group of widows or of moms or of child-free parents or child-free women or whatever. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. It's just like, okay, welcome to life. And everybody has their take. And with social media now, people can share their take with millions of other people. And okay, cool.
Do you think that there's some guideposts that people who are in grief should go into when they venture, like when you open Instagram, are there some thoughts that you should have in your own brain before you start reading other people's opinions and things like that? Does that question make sense, what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
asking?
What I've found is that curiosity is really helpful. Like, gosh, I wonder where this person's coming from. Huh, what would that be like to have that point of view? Interesting. To not see it as a threat. Difference doesn't have to be a threat. It can just be different. And people will grieve differently, and some people want to share and some people don't want to share anything. And some people, like you were saying, want to be called a widow and some don't. And like, okay, be curious about differences. The goal isn't to eliminate differences, it's to understand and expand ourselves and our perspectives and our hearts.
Do you think that there's something to be said about having some protection over your own heart when you go into that situation, though? Because when you're in grief, it's almost like you've been ripped open and you're very susceptible to, you go on there and somebody says you should or you shouldn't, which we know those words are swear words, be doing it a certain way. And whereas when we're in a good mental state, when we're in a bad mental state, we look at those things and then they like send us down a spiral of, self-hatred or grief or whatever. Is there a way to protect that tender heart that we're experiencing?
Yes, be intentional. Go to accounts on purpose. Don't just let things come to you. Be specific. If there's an account that you find really inspiring, go on social media with the intent to go to that account. Don't just let things come at you. When you're that vulnerable, it's assaulting, right? You can't process all of the information. So be very intentional in why am I going on social media and what account am I going to? And that's part of self-care.
That's so helpful because I sometimes think none of us ask to be widows unless we were a murderer. And so far, we're neither of those. We're not that. But
we haven't found any murderers yet.
Hopefully they're in
prison.
The death was not something that we caused or wanted to happen in most cases. And so I think it's easy for us grievers because we have so much on top of us just trying to survive. I mean, eating, it's hard to eat. For some of us, we have to have people put food in front of us or we won't eat. Doing anything. I mean, our brains are so broken, especially in the beginning part. If you have a suicide, then there's a whole other layer of many, many things that go on top of that. And sometimes grievers don't want to hear that they do have a responsibility, no matter what little increment it is. So that's one thing that's so hard because we see these things happening and people get offended or they're upset or they're so sad. And it's like, you're telling me that I have to be responsible for being intentional to go on social media to an account, but it's true. And I don't know if there's a way to bypass that other than the person getting to a place where they can recognize that, oh yes, just because it was not my fault that the death happened and now my kids have no parents and now I'm dealing with this and now I'm in probate and now I'm in this. I just want to go to social media where it's like my avoidance technique, but then I'm barraged with all this stuff. And it's like, even in social media, we do need to have the responsibility. If we can't handle it, get off, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, we still have responsibility to take care of ourselves. And if you know that that's not good for you, even if it's an avoidance strategy, like find another avoidance strategy, find another coping strategy that is more positive for you. But yeah, I mean, even when you're grieving, you still have some responsibility for your choices and for taking care of yourself and your children.
I think it's funny that we have pivoted to social media, but it's great because this is something that we deal with. The thing about social media is that it is a double-edged sword, just like everything in life. you can go on there and you can discover, you're never going to discover an account that really resonates with you unless you do a little bit of perusing. At the same time, you're never going to find accounts that are triggering and unhelpful if you're not perusing. So I kind of like the idea, and maybe you're saying this and maybe you're not, but that there's maybe times where it's when you ask yourself, is this a good time to go and explore a little bit? Or is this a time when I should just be sticking to what I know is going to be helpful for me at this point in time? Is that
Yes.
what you were saying? Yeah.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean that you can only ever go to things that you already know.
Right. But it's when you recognize that you are particularly vulnerable or overwhelmed, then you protect yourself, and that's practicing self-care.
We have a lot of widows from Utah in our group. And so in December, the LDS Church had said something like, hey, it's time to be grateful. We've been in COVID, so let's do the grateful things. I didn't even know about it because I ignore so many things. Like I ignore social media all the time. But we are in charge. We have a private group, Facebook group for our widows. And so many people are just like, decimated, and they're all posting in the group and they're like, this happened. And of course, people, the first thing that they're going to post is a picture of their husband and their wife. And so our widows that are from Utah, a lot of them were just like, I opened up social media and it was just whole family, not dead husband, just like boom, 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 because they have a lot of mom friends. Obviously, it wasn't every single post in their life, but when you have a couple, it's going to seem like most of it. And so that's where we first saw one of your posts, one of your reactions to that, where it was like, hey, guys, like, let's be mindful of how we do this. And I really appreciated what your post said, because it was talking about how not everybody has the things that you have, and there are thoughtful ways to do it. Man, I mean, of course, it doesn't just apply to widows, it can apply to anything. But will you talk to us a little bit about that, and maybe about that time and the response you got and what you see?
Yeah, because of my training and my profession, and because of the person that I am, I'm always thinking about people on the margins. Like, what impact is this going to have for people who are already hurting? And also allowing positive intent, like, the intent behind this is to increase people's gratitude. Awesome. And the unintended consequence is for people who don't have husbands, don't have kids, don't have a home, don't have food, right? Like, to be bombarded with reminders of everything they don't have. It just broke my heart. I just thought, and so I just said, let's be mindful. And while you're posting, reach out to someone who doesn't have, it's something like that. Reach out to someone who doesn't have what you have, and then hashtag mourn with those who mourn. And I got a lot of, it was shared a lot, and people really appreciated. And then I got a lot of pushback, like, you're not, you can imagine what I got from that. But I wasn't saying it was a bad thing. I was just saying, while we do this, keep in mind people who don't have, who might be suffering, and reach out to them.
It was so helpful for those of us in those groups. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. I was thinking about you. I was just like,
she was thinking about her friends Mel and Anita, who she hadn't even met yet, but she knew that we were BFFs. It's all fine.
No, just groups who don't have, who don't have spouses or kids, or were the ones that were particularly on my mind.
Yeah. My personal story is, I was married at 20, then divorced at 23 because my husband is an abusive alcoholic, which I forgot about until like 6 months ago in therapy, because my brain had just washed it over. Dated all like very volatile relationships for about 10 years. I found my husband finally. And I toured. I toured with Colin Ray. I did all sorts of like cool things in the world, like lived in New York, all this stuff. And I met my husband, Scott, and we were married 1 year and 11 months. And then he died after a tonsillectomy. The singer surgery everyone gets, the deviated septum and this. He was a theater
Oh my
director at
goodness.
Centerpoint in Centerville. And so I was on the fringe just because I was a single person. And then just because I was a musician. Every day of my life, I'm just waking up in the world and I'm like, I'm here. I like cats. Woo. And, already dealing with the being a kidless person, already dealing with being a female, already doing all of that. So then he dies. And it's just like, it was like, nope, here's another thing. Here's how it can get even more like, and so I feel like I've had a lot of experience in getting knocked down and being on the outside of a very inside culture. And now that I'm a widow and I'm seeing these things too, like I feel the need to advocate for those people and to kind of stick up for those people. So that was a really long explanation of why I'm so grateful for what you said, because and I wrote a response. I wrote my own thing on my Facebook and then I put your post in there. And
Thank you.
It was a lot of support, a lot of people that were like, thank you. Like a lot of, my gay friends, a lot of my Black friends, and a lot of people that are like white people that are just like, thank you. I don't know how to like have words to this. And the two people that posted negative things on mine were my cousins.
Let me guess. They're straight, white, married with kids.
Yes.
Don't take away our fun to be grateful.
Our happiness, our gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are a lot of widows that have not been through the particular struggles that I personally have, but even having the widow on their plate now they're starting to realize like it's a different kind of marginalization, I guess, than race. But it's so fascinating to try and advocate for those things, but then having your family say no.
Yeah.
What's wrong with somebody posting a picture of the sunset? And I'm like, my friend just committed suicide 2 weeks ago. My husband's dead and my anniversary just happened. And another friend just died of COVID. And you're going to tell me that knows how it is to grieve that I should be grateful for a sunset? Like, girl, we do that all day long. This is not that.
Yeah.
And so thank you for opening up the conversation just to have conversations.
You're welcome. I appreciate that. And I recognize my privilege as a cisgendered, married, white, upper middle class woman with children. I have resources. I have a following online. I want to use my privilege to create more empathy and space and awareness for people who don't have that kind of privilege, because I see them. I hear their stories. I see them. I feel like that's a responsibility that I have to mourn with those that mourn.
The thing I love also, though, is that you're not vilifying the people. Like you said, the original intent was a good intent. It didn't take into account the back end of that. And so it's like, it's another one of those ands. How do we show our gratitude and realize that not everybody has that? How do we be mindful of both groups of people? Not like nobody show gratitude. Nobody,
gratitude is bad.
Gratitude is bad. Like, we know it's good. We know that there's, it's just how you do it and how you are mindful about it, and that you do it with, like before, intention and a realization that your experience is not the only experience.
Right. And that not everyone is in a place where they can feel grateful. I mean, if you have someone you love that just died by suicide, you may not be able to find anything to be grateful about right then, and that's okay. And and we need to create space for different experiences other than just kind of the stereotypical experiences.
That's why we started our podcast, because we were like, what is happening? Like, let's talk about these things, because I had no idea, even all of the weird stuff I'd been through my whole life, like nothing could have prepared me for this kind of a thing, So how can we help others in that cause, like helping to lift others up the way that you are doing?
Well, I think you're doing it by using trying to make an impact in your sphere of influence, right? Educate people, raise awareness of concerns, broaden people's perspectives. I think you're doing it.
Eating cheese. That's also what we do.
Something that we find that widows almost universally deal with is guilt. And there is guilt from just about every single cause. There's guilt over the death of their spouse, which is usually not warranted. And then there's guilt about daily life, like, oh, I was annoyed at him that one time he did that thing and I should not have done that. And now I feel guilty. It just like human life. And then it ends. We feel guilty about what could have, should have happened and didn't happen. Do you have any words of wisdom about dealing with those thoughts?
Yeah. So those thoughts come from a belief that things should have been different, or you should have been different. And that's common, and it's not helpful. Like accepting what is and what was, like, that's where I was irritated that night, or that's like acceptance is the goal, not kind of like beating yourself up. But that's a common, so with that, it's like, give yourself grace. Of course, you're going to think those things like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have, but it's not serving you to go back and do that, and to recognize like it's based on like things should have been different, but like what happened. We can't change that. And the question then becomes, what can I learn from that? Well, I can learn to repair when I'm grumpy with my kids, repair it really quickly. I'm going to use it to move forward instead of ruminating on the past and what you can't change.
You say that it's not helpful and that but it's really, really difficult to just erase that.
Mm-hmm.
And I often think about it as, you've heard of the analogy of pushing the beach ball under the water. And there's something against fighting against it, or just letting you feel those feelings and then processing them through.
Mm-hmm.
How do we not just try and ignore them or push those and say, oh, these aren't helpful, this isn't helpful to me, I need to get rid of these, versus how do we say, yes, I have those feelings and this is how I'm going to work through them so that I can let go of those feelings?
You just answered your question. Very
Call
beautifully.
me Dr. Coyle.
You are a doctor, actually.
That's true. I am a doctor, but
she's a PT.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. You answered your question. Having self-compassion and recognizing that you are not your thoughts, and not everything you think is true. So often we over-identify with our thoughts as if they are us, and we assume that they're true. And so just holding space to kind of have a thought and then look at it and be like, yeah, okay.
Neutrality.
Right. Like it could be true. Maybe I shouldn't have been grumpy, but okay, maybe I should have. Like,
yeah.
Like it, just being able to create a little bit of space from your thoughts and kind of hold it out from your, like I'm holding my hand out in front of me, like put it there and examine it. So don't fight it, but don't just accept it as true and right and accurate either.
I've been thinking about that too. Like, I don't even trust my feelings anymore sometimes, because it's like, sometimes my body will have a reaction, but it's different from my brain, or sometimes my brain is like interpreting something a certain way. Why do you think we beat up on ourselves so much in general, just as human?
Part of what I think happens when someone you love dies is that we like to think that we could have controlled it somehow or prevented it somehow. And so by kind of going back through, oh, well, if I hadn't done this, or if I hadn't, or maybe this, or if I hadn't asked him to go to the store, or like it's an attempt to try and control something when there's really no controlling anything that's going on.
Here's a question that comes with a lot of baggage.
Okay.
What about when other people put guilt on us? We have widows in our group whose husbands have died of, let's say, substance abuse, and their family members, like the in-laws, are saying or putting on them, why didn't you do X, Y, or Z? Why didn't you stop them from, going through with their plan for suicide? Why didn't you get them care when they had that headache the first time and it turned out they had glioblastoma? And it's outside people who are actively, and not even sometimes doing it subtly, blaming a spouse for the death. And those people are in pain, right? And so they're lashing out. But how do our widows deal with that?
So if you have the capacity to even relate to this person, I mean, you can just say, I'm not talking to this person until I'm in a better place. That's fine. But if you have more to give, you can validate their pain. I know this is really painful for you. And then set a boundary. You may not say that to me again. You may not ask me that question. That's off limit. So reflect the emotion, they're in pain, and then set the boundary.
And then you have to be prepared to follow through with your boundary, which is the scariest part for me, because I'm all bark, no bite.
Yeah. And if they keep bringing it up, then so boundaries can be verbal, but you also have to be willing to back them up with action. So if you continue to ask me that question, I will stop talking with you. We will not come to Sunday dinner anymore. It's that important to me.
Mic drop.
It's so scary.
It's
I'm
hard.
so scared of boundaries. Ah!
They will set you free. It's so hard. Yeah, we have a lot of friends where there are a lot of issues like with in-laws, and a lot of times with suicide. People say the worst things ever.
Ugh.
It's so hard because it's like, it also takes effort to have a boundary and to speak up for yourself.
Well, that's why I said you can cut them off if you need to for a while.
Hear that, everybody?
Yep.
The doctor has spoken.
We need that also on the prescription pad.
And on a t-shirt.
You have to self-preserve. That's like number one. You have to stay alive and keep your kids alive. Like if you have kids, like that's it. That's your job. It's not to please other people or to explain things or to give, you have to survive and have, anybody in your stewardship. And so you can cut out people that are too draining right now and just be like, I am surviving and I will repair that later. But for now, bye-bye. Don't talk to people that aren't sensitive to what you're going through at this moment. You protect yourself.
Unfollow.
Yes.
The unfollow button is a glorious device.
Yes. Just because someone says something doesn't mean it's true either. Like, okay. And she's in a different place or he's in a different place. And that's fine. And you don't have to be in that place.
Yay.
That's the opposite of rate and review. Unfollow.
We have the most important question of all time. Are you ready for this?
I am ready.
If you get it wrong, we strip the doctor from your title.
Okay. All right. You have the power.
What's your favorite cheese?
I don't eat a lot of cheese.
Oh, shoot.
But I did have cheddar yesterday.
Did you like it?
I liked it a lot.
Was it
I also
mild?
I like medium cheddar or string. I like string cheese too.
Okay. These are acceptable answers.
Okay.
Congratulations. You may keep your credentials. Yes.
So nervous.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Hanks. We really love talking to you. I feel like we could throw any question at you and you would not even be fazed by it, and you'd be like, boom, what's wrong with you? This is the answer.
You don't have to believe everything I say, right?
I don't know.
If take it or leave it. So, but thank you, Anita and Melanie, for inviting me to be on your podcast.
Thank you for joining us. Remember to check out the Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN. And check out the Widow Wives Club. Make sure you answer all of the questions. Email us if you're having problems.
And if you want to buy us tacos, go to buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonow.
Until we talk to you next time, we hope you have found this episode amazingly helpful like we have. I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
I'm Dr. Julie Hanks.
And we're just two young widows and the Queen Empress Doctor of the world. And we're just trying to figure out Widow we do now.
This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.